What if the greatest civilization in human history, an empire of unparalleled scale and advancement, was deliberately erased from our records? What if the magnificent architecture we attribute to more recent eras actually belongs to a forgotten global power? This is the startling premise of the Tartarian Empire, a narrative that has quietly, and then explosively, reshaped the understanding of history for millions around the world, presenting a world far more enigmatic than we've been led to believe. This documentary embarks on a journey to uncover the origins, claims, and controversies surrounding this purported lost empire, a story woven from ancient maps, anomalous architecture, and an unwavering belief in a hidden past. For centuries, the name Tartary appeared on maps, a vast, ill-defined region stretching across Eurasia, encompassing what we now know as Central Asia, Siberia, and parts of China. It was a nebulous designation, often associated with nomadic Turkic and Mongol peoples, a land on the fringes of the known world for European cartographers. These maps, some dating back to the 16th and 17th centuries, depicted a Great Tartary or Independent Tartary, a territory more descriptive of geography and peoples than a unified, centralized empire in the modern sense. It was a world of khanates and tribal confederations, of shifting borders and formidable warriors, a challenging frontier for tsars and emperors alike. Yet in the annals of mainstream history, no grand, unified Tartarian empire, possessing advanced technology and a global reach, is ever mentioned. No centralized government, no singular ruling dynasty, no shared culture beyond regional variations is widely acknowledged. This stark absence from conventional historical discourse is precisely where the seeds of the modern Tartarian Empire theory began to germinate. Proponents of the Tartarian Empire theory contend that this historical Tartary was not merely a geographical label, but rather the remnants of a highly advanced, global civilization, flourishing perhaps as recently as the 19th century. They argue that this empire possessed technologies far beyond what we currently understand for that period, including what they term free energy or atmospheric electricity, capable of powering magnificent structures and intricate systems. The evidence, they claim, is all around us, hidden in plain sight. The grandiose, often ornate buildings found in nearly every major city across the globe. These structures, typically attributed to periods like the Belle Epoque, Victorian era, or even earlier classical revivals, are, according to the theory, the forgotten relics of Tartarian mastery. From the imposing governmental buildings in Washington, D.C., to the opulent World's Fair pavilions of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, from the grand European railway stations to the majestic architecture of cities like St. Petersburg, all are reinterpreted through a Tartarian lens. The uniformity of architectural styles, the sheer scale, and the intricate, often seemingly superfluous, details of these buildings are presented as proof of a shared, advanced civilization rather than disparate national achievements. One of the cornerstones of the Tartarian theory is the concept of the mud flood. This refers to a purported cataclysmic event, or series of events, that supposedly buried the lower levels of countless Tartarian structures under layers of mud and debris. Adherents point to buildings worldwide where ground floors appear to be partially submerged, with windows beginning inexplicably close to street level or even serving as basements. They offer photographs of excavations revealing full stories beneath current ground levels, arguing these are not simply architectural quirks or natural settling, but undeniable proof of a sudden, widespread inundation that occurred in the relatively recent past, obliterating much of the Tartarian ground level. This mud flood, combined with a supposed reset event or engineered cataclysm, is believed to have wiped out the advanced Tartarian civilization, leaving behind only the upper parts of their grand buildings and a world plunged into a technological dark age. The surviving population, according to this narrative, was then deliberately misled about their true history by a shadowy cabal, a deep state or elite group who sought to control knowledge and resources, rewriting the past to serve their own agenda. The very notion of a World's Fair is often re-examined through this perspective. Rather than exhibitions of contemporary technological prowess, proponents suggest these were, in fact, scavenging operations. They argue that the immense, temporary-looking structures, built with astonishing speed and often featuring free energy technologies disguised as decorative elements, were actually dismantled Tartarian buildings or replicas of their advanced systems. The new technologies displayed were merely rediscoveries or partial understandings of Tartarian knowledge, presented as novel human ingenuity to a gullible public. This suppression of history, the proponents assert, explains why such a vast empire vanished without a trace from textbooks. Mainstream historians, they claim, are either unwitting participants in this deception or actively complicit, refusing to acknowledge the overwhelming evidence readily available to those willing to look beyond official narratives. The narrative asserts that photographs were doctored, records destroyed, and entire generations brainwashed into believing a fabricated past. But how did such an expansive and intricate theory, challenging the very foundations of accepted history, gain such traction in the modern era? The answer lies largely in the power of the internet. With the rise of online forums, video sharing platforms, and social media, individuals dissatisfied with conventional explanations found a platform to share their alternative interpretations. The visual nature of the evidence, old photographs, architectural anomalies, and curious maps proved particularly compelling in a digital age. Untrained eyes, unburdened by academic conditioning, began to connect dots that mainstream scholarship had long dismissed as coincidences, stylistic trends, or simply the limitations of past construction. The appeal is profound. It offers a sense of uncovering a profound truth, of being privy to hidden knowledge, and of recontextualizing the familiar world around us into something far more mysterious and grand. For its adherents, the Tartarian Empire is not a fringe fantasy, but a suppressed reality waiting to be fully unveiled. The internet provided the perfect ecosystem for this collective investigation, allowing a global community of amateur researchers to pool their findings, cross-reference observations, and build an elaborate, interconnected tapestry of claims. What began as scattered observations about old buildings and an enigmatic name on a map slowly solidified into a comprehensive, alternative historical paradigm. But is this an act of profound historical rediscovery, or a complex tapestry of misinterpretations, fueled by confirmation bias and a mistrust of established institutions? The chasm between the Tartarian narrative and conventional history is vast, seemingly unbridgeable. To understand this divide, we must first delve into the historical reality of the region known as Tartary and trace the trajectory of how its name, and the perception of its peoples, evolved across centuries, long before any modern conspiracy theory took hold. We must also scrutinize the very architectural evidence that forms the backbone of the Tartarian claims, examining whether these structures truly defy conventional explanation, or if they are, in fact, products of the very eras to which they are officially attributed. The journey into the history of the Tartarian Empire, both the historical name and the conspiratorial construct, is a fascinating exploration of human belief, the power of narrative, and the enduring quest to understand where we come from. The next segment will begin to peel back these layers, starting with the actual historical Tartary depicted on ancient maps, and how it dramatically diverged from the elaborate empire imagined today. If the magnificent structures and advanced technologies attributed to a global Tartarian empire are indeed hidden in plain sight, then what truly constituted the vast, enigmatic land of Tartary that appeared on centuries of European maps? What did this designation represent to the cartographers and chroniclers of its time? And how did its reality dramatically diverge from the elaborate empire imagined today? Mainstream history acknowledges not a single, unified empire, but a complex mosaic of Turkic and Mongol peoples, who, for centuries, inhabited the sprawling steppes of Eurasia. This immense region, often simply labeled Tartary by Europeans who had little direct knowledge of its interior, was a shifting landscape of powerful tribal confederations and independent khanates, their borders fluid, their allegiances often fractured. From the Golden Horde, a successor state to the Mongol Empire that dominated vast swaths of Eastern Europe and Central Asia from the 13th to the 15th centuries, to the later Crimean, Kazan, and Astrakhan Khanates, these were formidable entities. These were empires born of conquest and sustained by martial prowess, often in direct conflict with emerging powers like Muscovy. Yet their focus was typically regional, their technologies commensurate with the period, and their architectural legacy, though impressive in its own right. Think of the stunning mosques and madrasas of Samarkand built under the Timurid dynasty. Bears little resemblance to the grandiose, neoclassical structures claimed by Tartarian theorists. The name itself, Tartar, was often imbued with a sense of the exotic and the fearsome by Europeans, a corruption of Tatar, the original ethnonym of certain Mongol and Turkic tribes. Some etymologists even suggest a deliberate linguistic link to Tartarus, the mythological underworld, further cementing a perception of these peoples as barbaric, alien, and mysterious. This perception, while certainly an oversimplification, highlights the fundamental gap between the European imagination of Tartary and the modern theory's assertion of a sophisticated global civilization. The historical Tartary was a collection of distinct cultures, languages, and political entities, characterized by a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle for many of its inhabitants, interspersed with powerful urban centers that served as hubs of trade and administration. They left behind a rich tapestry of archaeological sites, written records in various languages, and the enduring cultural impact of their conquests and migrations, all meticulously studied by historians and archaeologists. So, when proponents of the Tartarian Empire theory point to what they call Tartarian architecture, they are often referring to structures that mainstream history firmly attributes to known architectural movements and historical periods. How do we reconcile the two? Let us turn to the very evidence that forms the backbone of the Tartarian claims, the grand buildings and the world's fairs. One of the central tenets of the Tartarian narrative is that world's fairs, particularly those of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, were not genuine exhibitions of contemporary achievement, but rather showcases for plundered or salvaged Tartarian technology and architecture. This theory often cites the temporary nature of many fair buildings, their intricate designs, and the astonishing speed of their construction as proof of their non-conventional origins. However, a closer look at the historical context reveals a different story, one of human ingenuity, national pride, and unprecedented technological advancement. The period from the mid-19th century through the early 20th century was an era of profound industrial revolution and rapid urbanization. Nations vied for technological supremacy and cultural prestige, and world's fairs became the ultimate stage to display their progress. From the Crystal Palace at the Great Exhibition of 1851 in London to the Exposition Universelle of 1889 in Paris, where the Eiffel Tower, initially a temporary structure, became a permanent icon, these fairs were engineering marvels. They showcased innovations in steel construction, glass manufacturing, and, crucially, electrical power. Architects and engineers of the time, figures like Daniel Burnham, Louis Sullivan, and Gustave Eiffel, pushed the boundaries of what was possible, employing new materials and construction techniques to erect vast, intricate, and often highly ornate structures at remarkable speed. The temporary nature of many fair buildings was often a deliberate choice, driven by cost, the ephemeral purpose of the event, and the rapid pace of stylistic change. Structures were designed to be assembled quickly, often from prefabricated components, and then dismantled, recycled, or, in some cases, preserved. The claim that these fairs featured free energy technologies is often a misinterpretation of the burgeoning field of electrical engineering. The late 19th century saw a revolution in electricity, the development of practical generators, efficient lighting, like Edison's incandescent bulb, and the establishment of power grids. Fairs were indeed showcases for these cutting-edge electrical systems, with entire pavilions dedicated to demonstrating the wonders of electric light and power. Tesla's alternating current system, for example, famously lit the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition, a dazzling display that would have appeared almost magical to contemporary audiences accustomed to gaslight and candlelight. This was not free energy in the sense of limitless, untapped atmospheric power, but rather the harnessed, groundbreaking power of conventional electricity, a testament to human scientific endeavor. The so-called uniformity of architectural style across diverse global cities, often cited as proof of a single Tartarian civilization, also has a well-documented historical explanation. The late 19th and early 20th centuries witnessed the flourishing of movements like Beaux Arts, Neoclassical Revival, and Edwardian Baroque. These styles, heavily influenced by classical Greek and Roman architecture, emphasized grandeur, symmetry, and ornate detailing. They were propagated through academic institutions, particularly the prestigious École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, whose influence spread globally through its alumni and architectural treatises. Architects worldwide were trained in similar principles, leading to a widespread adoption of these grand, imposing styles for public buildings, banks, museums, and railway stations, structures intended to convey authority, stability, and national aspiration. The availability of mass-produced decorative elements, facilitated by industrialization, further contributed to this visual consistency. When we consider the mud flood theory, which posits a cataclysmic inundation burying the lower levels of Tartarian buildings, historical and geological explanations again provide alternative perspectives. Urban development throughout history has frequently involved raising street levels over time. As cities grow, new infrastructure, paving, and construction often lead to a gradual accumulation of ground elevation, effectively burying the lower stories of older buildings. Consider major cities that have existed for centuries. The present-day ground level in many ancient European or Middle Eastern cities can be several meters higher than the original ground level. Additionally, natural disasters like river floods, volcanic eruptions, which create pyroclastic flows that can bury structures in ash and mud, or even seismic liquefaction, can indeed lead to widespread deposition of earth and debris. Architects also frequently design buildings with basements or semi-basements for practical reasons, storage, service areas, or simply to provide a stable foundation. What might appear as a partially submerged first floor could simply be a design choice, or the natural consequence of a building settling over many decades. The mud flood narrative, while visually compelling in select historical photographs, often overlooks these established historical, geological, and architectural explanations, instead attributing every instance of a submerged window or a discovered lower floor to a singular, global cataclysm and deliberate erasure. The chasm between these two interpretations, the meticulously documented history of human innovation, urbanization, and architectural evolution, versus the compelling, yet unsupported, narrative of a forgotten global empire remains vast. The next segment will delve deeper into specific architectural examples, examining how the supposed anomalies are explained by conventional historical and engineering principles, and how the intricate dance of evidence and interpretation shapes our understanding of the past. We've explored how mainstream history meticulously accounts for the grand architecture and technological leaps often attributed to a global Tartarian empire. But what about the more profound and insidious claims at the core of the Tartarian narrative, the notion of a reset event, a catastrophic global mud flood, and the deliberate erasure of an entire advanced civilization by a shadowy cabal? How could such an epic deception be orchestrated and maintained across continents and centuries? And what does conventional history offer in its place that stands up to critical scrutiny? The theory of a widespread, cataclysmic mud flood is often presented as undeniable evidence of a recent global reset, burying the lower levels of Tartarian structures. However, urban archaeology and geology provide a far more nuanced and evidence-based explanation. Beyond the gradual elevation of street levels through centuries of refuse, paving, and new construction, a phenomenon meticulously documented in archaeological excavations worldwide, revealing layers of human activity sometimes meters deep there, are also well understood geological processes. Riverine floods, seismic events causing liquefaction, and even localized tsunamis have, throughout history, buried settlements and structures. But these are regional, often localized events with distinct geological signatures. They are not consistent with a single, synchronized global catastrophe of the scale required by the mud flood theory. Furthermore, detailed stratigraphy from countless archaeological sites across the globe simply does not show a uniform, recent mud layer consistent with a single, massive global inundation event. Instead, archaeologists unearth successive layers of human habitation, each with its own distinct cultural artifacts and geological composition, providing a continuous, datable timeline. The idea that a global, highly advanced civilization could simply vanish, its memory obliterated by a reset event and subsequent cover-up, presents an immense logistical and intellectual challenge. Mainstream history, through the painstaking work of archaeologists, linguists, and historians, pieces together the past using a vast array of evidence, written records in diverse languages, archaeological artifacts, architectural remains, genetic studies, and oral traditions. Each piece of evidence is cross-referenced, debated, and subjected to rigorous academic scrutiny. For a global Tartarian empire to be erased, one would need to explain the systematic destruction or alteration of countless disparate records across every culture, language, and continent. Consider the sheer volume of information that would need to be suppressed. Government decrees, trade agreements, personal letters, maps, scientific treatises, religious texts, family genealogies, and the collective memory of populations spanning generations. The proposition of a global reset event and subsequent historical erasure demands an extraordinary level of coordinated deception. 1. that defies the very nature of human society and the rigorous methodologies of historical and scientific inquiry. Historically, no single entity has ever possessed the capacity to control and manipulate information on such a global scale, nor to maintain secrecy over centuries without countless leaks or counter-narratives emerging from diverse populations. While historical revisionism and propaganda have certainly occurred, they are typically limited in scope and duration, and almost always leave traces of the original narrative. The absence of any substantial, independently verifiable evidence for a unified Tartarian language, distinct writing system, unique cultural artifacts beyond those already attributed to known historical peoples, or widespread archaeological sites that contradict established timelines, significantly weakens the theory. What about the advanced free energy technologies supposedly hidden in plain sight, misidentified as architectural ornamentation or early electrical infrastructure? Proponents often point to ornate finials, domes, and metal structures on buildings, claiming they are relics of atmospheric electricity generators. However, these elements have documented historical purposes. Domes and spires, for example, were architectural statements, often serving as ventilation shafts, bell towers, or simply to add grandeur. The metal elements often refer to decorative ironwork, lightning rods which became essential as buildings grew taller and electricity more prevalent, or early forms of radio and telegraph antennas. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were indeed a period of revolutionary technological advancement, particularly in electricity. Figures like Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, and George Westinghouse were not rediscovering lost Tartarian technology, but pioneering new scientific principles and engineering applications. The wonders displayed at world's fairs, such as the dazzling illumination of the 1893 Chicago Columbian Exposition by Tesla's AC system, were indeed groundbreaking, but they were the result of painstaking scientific research, experimentation, and industrial development, not the unveiling of ancient secrets. These were genuine human achievements, documented in thousands of scientific papers, patents, and engineering journals of the era. The uniformity of architectural styles, which Tartarian theorists cite as proof of a single global civilization, is also a product of clearly identifiable historical trends. The global spread of neoclassical, Beaux Arts, and Gothic revival styles was facilitated by academic institutions like the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, whose influence was global. Architects from around the world studied these classical principles, returning to their home countries to design buildings that conveyed civic pride, stability, and adherence to perceived high culture. The use of new industrial materials like steel and reinforced concrete allowed for unprecedented scale, while mass production techniques made ornate decoration more accessible. This led to a global architectural language, not because of a single hidden empire, but through shared aesthetic ideals, technological diffusion, and the aspirations of burgeoning nation-states. Ultimately, the chasm between the Tartarian narrative and conventional history is not merely a matter of interpretation, but of methodology. Mainstream history relies on verifiable evidence, peer review, and a continuous process of critical inquiry, constantly revising its understanding as new evidence emerges. The Tartarian theory, however, often starts with a conclusion that an advanced empire was suppressed, and then interprets all anomalies and architectural quirks through that lens, often dismissing conventional explanations as part of the cover-up. The true history of our world, though less sensational than a hidden global empire, is arguably far more intricate, more challenging, and ultimately, more awe-inspiring in its documented achievements. It is a testament to human ingenuity, perseverance, and the continuous, often messy, march of progress. To truly understand our past, we must scrutinize not just what we see, but how we see it, and the very foundations of the stories we choose to believe. In our next segment, we will explore the fascinating world of historical hoaxes and the psychological underpinnings that make alternative narratives, however improbable, so powerfully attractive, examining why such a compelling story has resonated with so many. In an era awash with information, where the line between fact and fiction can blur with alarming speed, why do certain narratives, despite their profound divergence from established historical records, continue to resonate so deeply with millions? What is it about the story of a lost, advanced civilization, deliberately erased from our collective memory, that captures the imagination and compels belief, even in the face of rigorous academic counterarguments? The allure of the Tartarian Empire, as we've seen, transcends mere curiosity. It taps into powerful human desires and psychological predispositions that make alternative histories profoundly attractive. At its heart, the appeal of the Tartarian narrative lies in a fundamental human yearning for meaning and a coherent explanation for the world around us. When faced with architectural grandeur that seems to defy the known capabilities of past eras, or when confronted with the perceived inconsistencies in official accounts, the human mind instinctively seeks patterns and connections. This tendency, often termed patternicity by cognitive scientists, can lead individuals to identify relationships where none exist, or to imbue coincidences with profound significance, a psychological phenomenon that becomes a bedrock for many conspiratorial worldviews. For many, the idea that a shadowy cabal has suppressed an advanced past offers a powerful, albeit conspiratorial, framework for understanding the world's complexities. It provides a simple, compelling answer to a multitude of questions, from the origins of impressive buildings to the perceived injustices of modern society, by attributing them to a hidden, nefarious agenda. This narrative often preys on a perfectly natural and, in many contexts, healthy skepticism towards authority. In an age where trust in institutions, be they governmental, academic, or media, has eroded, the notion that official history is merely a fabricated story designed to keep the masses ignorant becomes profoundly attractive. It offers the adherent a sense of being in the know, of possessing a hidden truth that the unenlightened majority cannot perceive. This perceived intellectual superiority can be a potent psychological reward, fostering a strong sense of community and shared purpose among fellow believers who champion this exclusive, secret knowledge. The digital age, as we touched upon, has been the primary accelerant for the Tartarian theory's widespread acceptance and rapid proliferation. The Internet, while an unparalleled tool for knowledge dissemination and democratic access to information, also provides a fertile ground for confirmation bias. Individuals seeking to validate their beliefs can easily find a vast array of user-generated content, videos, blogs, forums, and social media posts that echoes and reinforces their initial assumptions, often without the necessary filters of critical peer review or factual verification. The sophisticated algorithms of social media platforms, designed to serve users more of what they engage with, inadvertently create powerful echo chambers, further solidifying these alternative narratives and isolating adherents from dissenting viewpoints. It's a self-perpetuating cycle where evidence is actively sought to confirm a pre-existing conclusion, rather than evidence being dispassionately used to arrive at an objective conclusion. Historically, humanity has grappled with hoaxes and sincere misinterpretations of the past. From the infamous Piltdown Man hoax of the early 20th century, which presented fabricated bone fragments as a missing link in human evolution, to the numerous instances of forged historical documents, such as the donation of Constantine used to bolster papal authority. The past is replete with examples of deliberate deception and genuine mistakes. Another example can be found in the early interpretations of archaeological sites like those in Mesoamerica, where grand ruins were initially attributed to lost white civilizations rather than the indigenous peoples who actually built them, reflecting a Eurocentric bias and a resistance to acknowledging non-European architectural prowess. However, the crucial distinction in these cases lies in the methodology of detection and correction. Mainstream science and history, through rigorous peer review, advanced dating techniques, cross-referencing of diverse sources, and continuous archaeological discovery, ultimately exposed these frauds or corrected the misinterpretations. Piltdown Man, for instance, was eventually unmasked through advanced scientific analysis decades after its initial discovery. These corrections, while sometimes slow and arduous, are integral to the self-correcting nature of academic and scientific inquiry. In stark contrast, proponents of the Tartarian Empire often dismiss any contradictory evidence or mainstream explanations, however thoroughly documented, as merely part of the overarching cover-up, making their narrative seemingly impervious to conventional disproof. This creates a closed system of belief, where all incoming information is filtered and reinterpreted through the tightly held lens of the conspiracy. The very idea of a reset event, a clean slate for history, is another powerful psychological draw. It taps into a desire for simplicity in a complex world, suggesting that the intricate, messy, and often contradictory tapestry of human history can be explained by a single, dramatic event and its deliberate obfuscation. This narrative provides a clear villain, the shadowy elite, and a compelling hero, the truth seeker unearthing the suppressed past. Such clear-cut roles offer a moral clarity and a sense of cosmic struggle that the nuanced, often ambiguous reality of historical research rarely provides. The mud flood itself, as a concept, is visually striking and emotionally resonant. Images of partially buried buildings, presented without full context or alternative explanations, create an immediate, visceral impact. It appeals to a sense of discovery, of uncovering something literally hidden beneath our feet. This visual evidence, easily shareable online, becomes a cornerstone of the theory, often outweighing reams of academic explanations about urban development, geological processes, or architectural practices. The sheer volume of such images, compiled from disparate locations and eras, creates an illusion of overwhelming proof, even if each individual example has a perfectly rational, non-catastrophic explanation. Understanding the why behind the Tartarian theory's appeal is not to dismiss the legitimate human desire to question and to seek deeper truths. Indeed, skepticism and critical inquiry are vital components of intellectual progress. However, there is a crucial difference between questioning established narratives with verifiable evidence and constructing an elaborate counter-narrative based on selective interpretation, visual anomalies, and a wholesale rejection of well-established methodologies. The challenge for any seeker of truth, whether a professional historian or an interested amateur, is to navigate this landscape of information with a discerning eye, to cultivate intellectual humility, and to be open to evidence that contradicts cherished beliefs. As we move forward, the task remains to rigorously examine the specific claims and evidence put forth by Tartarian proponents, contrasting them not just with the broader frameworks of history and science, but with the specific, detailed explanations that mainstream scholarship offers for each anomaly. The enduring popularity of the Tartarian Empire theory forces us to confront not just the nature of history itself, but the very mechanisms of human belief, the power of narrative, and the profound responsibility that comes with interpreting the past in a world where information and misinformation travels at the speed of light. Our next segment will delve into the figures and communities actively promoting these theories today, and the real-world implications of their widespread dissemination and influence. In an era awash with information, where fact and fiction blur, who are the modern architects of the Tartarian narrative, and what drives their tireless efforts to rewrite history? How does a theory, so at odds with accumulated evidence, find fervent global appeal? And what are the tangible consequences when alternative histories deeply embed in public consciousness? The modern Tartarian advocacy landscape is largely decentralized, an organic network of independent researchers, content creators, and enthusiastic followers operating within the digital realm. Unlike traditional academia, which relies on credentials, peer review, and institutions, the Tartarian movement bypasses these. It thrives on self-proclaimed expertise, valorizing intuition over academic pronouncements, and makes direct, emotionally charged appeals to a public distrustful of mainstream narratives. Platforms like YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and various social media sites serve as primary broadcast channels. Here, videos dissecting architectural anomalies, presenting old maps, or offering radical interpretations of historical events accumulate millions of views. Prominent figures, often lacking formal training, quickly become influential gurus or truth-tellers, their analyses amplified by algorithms and shared voraciously by followers who perceive themselves as an enlightened minority, privy to secrets denied to the sheeple. These individuals frame themselves as courageous truth-seekers, challenging a corrupt establishment and revealing suppressed knowledge, portraying their work as a vital service. Their narratives are crafted to be engaging, visually driven, and emotionally resonant, frequently employing dramatic music, rapid cuts, and rhetorical questions designed to provoke doubt in conventional explanations and foster intellectual rebellion. Their methodology, if rigorously defined, typically involves selective observation and confirmation bias. They pore over digitized historical photographs, often from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, searching for mud flood evidence in partially buried windows or disproportionate building heights. Old World's Fair images are scrutinized for free energy devices, claimed to be disguised ornamentation or early electrical infrastructure, or for evidence of massive, temporary structures built with impossible speed, positing they were repurposed Tartarian relics. Cartographic anomalies like shifting, vague borders of historical Tartary, or the Great Tartary designation on early European maps are interpreted not as approximations or evolving realities, but as deliberate clues, if not proof, of a hidden, unified global empire. Widespread architectural patterns, like global neoclassical or Beaux Arts adoption, are presented not as artistic diffusion or technological transfer, but as irrefutable evidence of a singular, global building culture originating from Tartaria. Crucially, any conventional, meticulously sourced explanation from mainstream historians, architects, or geologists is immediately dismissed as part of the official narrative or the cover-up orchestrated by a shadowy elite. This creates a resistant, closed loop of reasoning, where every incoming piece of information, regardless of origin or veracity, is recontextualized to fit the pre-existing conclusion of a suppressed Tartarian past. The sheer volume of this digitally presented evidence, a constant stream of images, videos, and speculative texts, even if individually debunked, creates an illusion of undeniable truth for the uninitiated, fostering a powerful sense of where there's smoke, there's fire, and discovery. But what are the profound, alarming real-world implications when such an elaborate, alternative history spreads through public consciousness? The most significant consequence is the profound erosion of trust in established knowledge institutions. When history textbooks, archaeological findings, and expert consensus are systematically painted as instruments of deliberate deception, it fundamentally undermines shared understanding, critical inquiry, and civic discourse. This erosion often extends beyond history, spilling into other vital public areas, from science and medicine to politics and journalism. A populace convinced a global civilization was erased by manipulative forces becomes inherently more susceptible to other conspiracy theories, fostering pervasive skepticism towards verifiable facts and an inability to distinguish credible information from fiction. This trend also severely impacts historical literacy. Instead of engaging with the complex, nuanced realities of the past human triumphs, failures, and slow progress, replete with ambiguities, individuals are drawn to simpler, sensational narratives with clear villains and a satisfying sense of discovery. Rigorous, evidence-based methodologies are sidelined for superficial visual proof and bombastic speculation. This represents a significant decline in critical thinking, diminishing the ability to discern credible sources, evaluate evidence, and engage constructively with conflicting information. For younger generations, exposed to these theories through early digital interactions, distinguishing between meticulously researched history and compelling, unfounded narratives becomes an increasingly formidable and critical task, shaping their worldview. How, then, does mainstream academia, bound by empirical evidence and scholarly rigor, respond to a phenomenon that rejects its very premises? The response from professional historians, archaeologists, and architectural conservators has been varied, evolving, but often tinged with caution and frustration. Initially, many academics dismissed Tartarian theories as fringe curiosities, not worthy of serious engagement. However, as these theories gained wider traction within online communities, a more direct, albeit challenging, engagement has slowly begun. Academics often find themselves in a difficult position. To refute every claim can be perceived as validating the theory, or worse, confirming the cover-up. Yet, silence allows misinformation to proliferate unchecked. Consequently, contemporary efforts focus on re-emphasizing robust historical research methodologies, meticulously explaining nuanced historical context of architectural styles, cartographic conventions, urban development, and technological evolution, providing accessible, evidence-based counter-narratives through public outreach. Increasingly, educational institutions and public libraries invest in comprehensive digital literacy initiatives, aiming to equip the public with tools to critically evaluate online information, recognize logical fallacies, and identify reliable sources, rather than just debunking specific theories. The challenge is immense, for it is not merely a battle of facts, but a deeply ingrained struggle for narrative control in a fragmented information ecosystem, where emotion and tribal allegiance often triumph over reasoned argument. The pervasive spread of the Tartarian Empire theory is more than an interesting footnote. It is a profound symptom of our digital age, a powerful and unsettling illustration of how novel belief systems form and propagate with astonishing speed outside traditional knowledge gatekeepers. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about historical authority, the nature of verifiable evidence, and the complex construction of shared reality in a hyper-connected, often polarized world. While the historical record, painstakingly assembled over centuries, offers a coherent, complex, and evolving account of human civilization. The powerful allure of a hidden, grander past continues to exert an undeniable pull. This phenomenon begs us to ask, what does the enduring human quest for a lost civilization, however speculative, truly tell us about ourselves, our anxieties, and our relationship with the past we inherit? In our final segment, we will reflect on the lasting impact of such alternative histories, consider broader implications for intellectual inquiry in the digital age, and ponder what the enduring fascination with the unseen and unknown ultimately reveals about the human condition. In an era awash with information, where fact and fiction blur, who are the modern architects of the Tartarian narrative, and what drives their tireless efforts to rewrite history? How does a theory, so at odds with accumulated evidence, find fervent global appeal, and what are the tangible consequences when alternative histories deeply embed in public consciousness? The modern Tartarian advocacy landscape is largely decentralized, an organic network of independent researchers, content creators, and enthusiastic followers operating within the digital realm. Unlike traditional academia, which relies on credentials, peer review, and institutions, the Tartarian movement bypasses these. It thrives on self-proclaimed expertise, valorizing intuition over academic pronouncements, and makes direct, emotionally charged appeals to a public distrustful of mainstream narratives. Platforms like YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, and various social media sites serve as primary broadcast channels. Here, videos dissecting architectural anomalies, presenting old maps, or offering radical interpretations of historical events accumulate millions of views. Prominent figures, often lacking formal training in history, architecture, or geology, quickly become influential gurus or truth-tellers, amassing vast digital followings. Their analyses are amplified by algorithms designed to maximize engagement, and their content is shared voraciously by followers who perceive themselves as an enlightened minority, privy to secrets denied to the sheeple, a term frequently used to categorize those who accept mainstream accounts. These individuals deliberately frame themselves as courageous truth seekers, challenging a corrupt establishment and revealing suppressed knowledge, portraying their work as a vital public service against pervasive deception. Their narratives are meticulously crafted to be engaging, visually driven, and emotionally resonant, frequently employing dramatic music, rapid cuts between evidence, and rhetorical questions designed to provoke immediate doubt in conventional explanations and foster intellectual rebellion among their audience. Their methodology, if rigorously defined, typically involves selective observation and confirmation bias. They pore over digitized historical photographs, often from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, searching for mud flood evidence in partially buried windows or disproportionate building heights. Old World's Fair images are scrutinized for free energy devices, claimed to be disguised ornamentation or early electrical infrastructure, or for evidence of massive, temporary structures built with impossible speed, positing they were repurposed Tartarian relics. Cartographic anomalies like shifting, vague borders of historical Tartary, or the Great Tartary designation on early European maps are interpreted not as approximations or evolving realities, but as deliberate clues, if not proof, of a hidden, unified global empire. Widespread architectural patterns, like global neoclassical or Beaux Arts adoption, are presented not as artistic diffusion or technological transfer, but as irrefutable evidence of a singular, global building culture originating from Tartaria. Crucially, any conventional, meticulously sourced explanation from mainstream historians, architects, or geologists, is almost immediately dismissed as merely part of the official narrative or the cover-up orchestrated by a shadowy elite. This creates a resistant, closed loop of reasoning, a hermetically sealed echo chamber where external facts and counter-arguments are not merely rejected, but are actively reinterpreted as further proof of the very conspiracy they seek to expose. Every incoming piece of information, regardless of its origin or veracity, is recontextualized to fit the pre-existing conclusion of a suppressed Tartarian past, rendering the theory impervious to conventional disproof. The sheer volume of this digitally presented evidence, a constant stream of images, videos, and speculative texts, even if each individual claim has been thoroughly debunked by experts, creates an illusion of undeniable truth for the uninitiated, fostering a powerful sense of where the smoke, there's fire and the thrill of discovery, but what are the profound, alarming real-world implications when such an elaborate, alternative history spreads through public consciousness? The most significant consequence is the profound erosion of trust in established knowledge institutions. When history textbooks, archaeological findings, and expert consensus are systematically painted as instruments of deliberate deception, it fundamentally undermines shared understanding, critical inquiry, and civic discourse. This erosion often extends beyond history, spilling into other vital public areas, from science and medicine to politics and journalism. A populace convinced a global civilization was erased by manipulative forces becomes inherently more susceptible to other conspiracy theories, fostering pervasive skepticism towards verifiable facts and an inability to distinguish credible information from fiction. This trend also severely impacts historical literacy. Instead of engaging with the complex, nuanced realities of the past human triumphs, failures, and slow progress, replete with ambiguities, individuals are drawn to simpler, sensational narratives with clear villains and a satisfying sense of discovery. Rigorous, evidence-based methodologies are sidelined for superficial visual proof and bombastic speculation. This represents a significant decline in critical thinking, diminishing the ability to discern credible sources, evaluate evidence, and engage constructively with conflicting information. For younger generations, exposed to these theories through early digital interactions, distinguishing between meticulously researched history and compelling, unfounded narratives becomes an increasingly formidable and critical task, shaping their worldview. How, then, does mainstream academia, bound by empirical evidence and scholarly rigor, respond to a phenomenon that rejects its very premises? The response from professional historians, archaeologists, and architectural conservators has been varied, evolving, but often tinged with caution and frustration. Initially, many academics dismissed Tartarian theories as fringe curiosities, not worthy of serious engagement. However, as these theories gained wider traction within online communities, a more direct, albeit challenging, engagement has slowly begun. Academics often find themselves in a difficult position. To refute every claim can be perceived as validating the theory, or worse, confirming the cover-up. Yet, silence allows misinformation to proliferate unchecked. Consequently, contemporary efforts focus on re-emphasizing robust historical research methodologies, meticulously explaining nuanced historical context of architectural styles, cartographic conventions, urban development, and technological evolution, providing accessible, evidence-based counter-narratives through public outreach. Increasingly, educational institutions and public libraries invest in comprehensive digital literacy initiatives, aiming to equip the public with tools to critically evaluate online information, recognize logical fallacies, and identify reliable sources. rather than just debunking specific theories. The challenge is immense, for it is not merely a battle of facts, but a deeply ingrained struggle for narrative control in a fragmented information ecosystem, where emotion and tribal allegiance often triumph over reasoned argument. The pervasive spread of the Tartarian Empire theory is more than an interesting footnote. It is a profound symptom of our digital age, a powerful and unsettling illustration of how novel belief systems form and propagate with astonishing speed outside traditional knowledge gatekeepers. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about historical authority, the nature of verifiable evidence, and the complex construction of shared reality in a hyper-connected, often polarized world. While the historical record, painstakingly assembled over centuries, offers a coherent, complex, and evolving account of human civilization, the powerful allure of a hidden, grander past continues to exert an undeniable pull. This phenomenon begs us to ask, what does the enduring human quest for a lost civilization, however speculative, truly tell us about ourselves, our anxieties, and our relationship with the past we inherit? In our final segment, we will reflect on the lasting impact of such alternative histories, consider broader implications for intellectual inquiry in the digital age, and ponder what the enduring fascination with the unseen and unknown ultimately reveals about the human condition. After months of journeying through historical archives, digital landscapes, and the annals of academic inquiry, we arrive at a crucial crossroads. We have meticulously dissected the claims of a hidden, global Tartarian empire, from its purported architectural grandeur and advanced, free energy technologies, to the cataclysmic mud flood and the audacious notion of a global historical reset. We've contrasted these compelling, visually rich assertions with the painstaking, evidence-based narratives of mainstream history, archaeology, and architectural scholarship. But as our journey concludes, the ultimate question remains: what enduring lessons can we draw from the fervent belief in a lost empire? And what does this phenomenon tell us not just about the past, but profoundly about ourselves in the present and the future we are collectively building? This documentary has sought to illuminate the intricate tapestry of historical reality, which meticulously accounts for each of the anomalies cited by Tartarian proponents. We have delved into the grand, imposing architecture found across the globe, revealing it not as the uniform legacy of a single hidden civilization, but as a vibrant testament to specific, well-documented historical movements. The powerful neoclassical, Beaux Arts, and Gothic revival styles that swept the world. These movements, propagated by influential European academies like the École des Beaux-Arts, were eagerly adopted by burgeoning nation-states and growing cities, driven by civic pride, a shared aesthetic ideal, and the desire to project authority and stability. They were the documented works of master architects and visionary engineers, men like Gustave Eiffel, Daniel Burnham, and Antoni Gaudí, who, with the innovative tools and knowledge of their respective eras, pushed the boundaries of what was physically and aesthetically possible, leveraging new materials like structural steel and reinforced concrete. Their blueprints, their correspondence, their published works, and the contemporary civic records stand as irrefutable testaments to their creativity and skill. The pervasive mud flood narrative, presented as undeniable proof of a recent global cataclysm, has, under scrutiny, resolved into a confluence of well-understood historical and geological processes. We've seen how urban accretion, the gradual raising of street levels over centuries due to accumulating refuse, new paving, and successive construction, naturally buries older structures, a phenomenon meticulously documented by urban archaeologists in cities from Rome to London. We've also examined localized natural disasters, such as riverine floods or volcanic ash falls, which can certainly bury structures but occur regionally, not as a synchronized global inundation. Furthermore, many supposed buried ground floors are simply basements or semi-basements, a common and practical design choice in historical architecture, often serving for storage, services, or as a strong foundation. The detailed stratigraphy from countless archaeological sites across continents consistently reveals layers of continuous human habitation, each with distinct artifacts and geological compositions, providing a continuous, datable timeline that simply does not show a uniform, recent global mud layer consistent with the scale and synchronization required by the Tartarian theory and one of the purported free energy marvels, showcased at world's fairs and subtly integrated into ornate architecture. These, too, have been shown to be the groundbreaking, meticulously documented advancements in conventional electricity pioneered by giants like Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, and George Westinghouse. The dazzling illumination of the 1893 Chicago Columbian Exposition by Tesla's alternating current system was not the rediscovery of an ancient power source, but a genuine scientific and engineering triumph, born of painstaking research, experimentation, and industrial innovation. These were the documented wonders of an era actively harnessing electricity for the first time on a grand scale, transforming human lives, not unveiling lost secrets. Even the vague geographical designation of Tartary on ancient European maps, once a source of conspiratorial intrigue, has been meticulously traced. It was a fluid, evolving label for a vast Eurasian landmass inhabited by diverse nomadic and semi-nomadic Turkic and Mongol peoples, whose own rich histories, complex political structures, and impressive cultural achievements are thoroughly researched through their extensive records, archaeological findings, and genetic studies. This historical Tartary was a collection of distinct khanates and tribal confederations, not a singular, technologically advanced global empire erased from memory yet. Despite this wealth of painstakingly assembled and cross-referenced counter-evidence, the allure of the Tartarian narrative persists, even thrives. Why? Because it offers something that mainstream history, in its commitment to nuance, complexity, and often difficult truths, sometimes struggles to provide: a simple, coherent, and deeply satisfying answer. It taps into a perfectly understandable human desire to question authority, to uncover secrets, and to find a grand, unifying explanation for perceived inconsistencies or the sheer scale of the world's architectural heritage. In an increasingly complex and often chaotic world, where trust in institutions, be they governmental, academic, or media, has undeniably eroded, the idea of a deliberate historical cover-up by a shadowy elite provides a clear villain and a powerful S. Ensev empowering insight for those who believe they have seen through the veil. This perceived intellectual superiority, the sense of being in the know, can be a potent psychological reward, fostering a strong sense of community and shared purpose among fellow believers who champion this exclusive, secret knowledge. The digital age, with its sophisticated algorithms designed to maximize engagement, has proven to be the ideal crucible for such narratives, amplifying them to a global audience hungry for hidden truths and community, often creating powerful echo chambers where alternative facts are endlessly reinforced. The true tragedy of the Tartarian phenomenon, and others like it, is not merely the misinterpretation of history, however egregious. It is the profound erosion of trust in the very mechanisms we rely on as a society to understand our world, solve problems, and make informed decisions. When meticulous research, peer-reviewed scholarship, and verifiable evidence are systematically painted as instruments of deliberate deception, the foundations of shared knowledge and critical inquiry begin to crack. This pervasive skepticism, once directed at historical narratives, often metastasizes, bleeding into distrust of science, medicine, journalism, and democratic institutions. It weakens our collective capacity for critical thinking, replacing rigorous inquiry with a preference for sensationalism, emotionally charged anecdotes, and easily digestible, yet unsubstantiated narratives. For a society to function, to tackle complex challenges from climate change to public health, it requires a collective commitment to verifiable facts and a willingness to engage constructively with evidence, even when it challenges our preconceived notions or tribal allegiances. The ease with which an elaborate, unfounded narrative can spread globally highlights a critical vulnerability in our contemporary information ecosystem, a vulnerability that demands our urgent attention. But let us not conclude this journey with a sense of intellectual despair. Instead, let us reaffirm the profound wonder and power of actual history, the history painstakingly assembled from countless fragments across millennia. The true history of human civilization is not a simple, monolithic story, nor is it a saga of erased empires waiting to be rediscovered. It is a far more intricate, often messy, yet ultimately more inspiring tapestry of human ingenuity, resilience, and ceaseless striving. It is the story of architects and builders who, with the tools and knowledge of their time, pushed the boundaries to create breathtaking masterpieces like the Roman aqueducts, the intricate cathedrals of Europe, the majestic Forbidden City, or the soaring skyscrapers of the 20th century. It is the story of scientists, philosophers, and artists who, through painstaking observation, experimentation, and creative genius, unlocked the mysteries of the universe, propelled us from the agricultural revolution to the digital age, and illuminated the human condition. It is the story of diverse cultures, from the intricate urban planning of ancient Sumer to the vast trade networks of the Silk Road, from the monumental achievements of indigenous American civilizations to the philosophical insights of ancient Greece, each leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of human achievement and thought. These are not relics of a suppressed past, but the documented legacies of countless individuals and societies whose struggles, innovations, triumphs, and failures are not hidden. They are painstakingly preserved in archives, unearthed by archaeologists, deciphered by linguists, and continually reinterpreted by generations of scholars. This is a history that is constantly evolving, open to new discoveries and challenging established understandings, but always grounded in verifiable evidence and subject to rigorous academic scrutiny as the sun sets on our exploration of the Tartarian Empire, a concept born from visual curiosities and nurtured by digital dissemination. We are left with a powerful choice and a profound responsibility. Do we succumb to the seductive simplicity of a hidden past, abandoning the challenging but ultimately more rewarding path of evidence-based inquiry? Or do we embrace the responsibility of critical discernment, celebrating the unparalleled richness and complexity of documented human history, while cultivating the intellectual humility and rigorous faculties necessary to navigate an age of abundant information and potent misinformation? The true legacy of Tartary may not be a forgotten empire, but a potent lesson for the modern world, that the pursuit of truth requires more than just looking. It demands critical thinking, intellectual humility, and an unwavering commitment to verifiable facts. It is in this vigilant pursuit, this continuous questioning grounded in evidence, and this profound respect for the painstakingly assembled record of our past, that humanity truly finds its greatest narratives and secures its future. For the greatest stories are not those that are hidden, waiting to be dramatically unveiled, but those that are revealed, layer by painstaking layer, by the enduring light of human reason, curiosity, and intellectual integrity.